Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/pulp. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This is 33% Pulp, squeezing the best out of 1/3 of a book. We each read a different third of a book we choose based entirely on the cover and then recap it across 3 episodes. I'm Linzi, that's Amber.
Hi.
And that's Daniel.
Hi. Our featured review of the week is by LLH867, who wrote, "Clever concept, witty hosts, superb storytelling. You don't want to miss this." So thank you, LLH867.
So a little bit of housekeeping for this episode, a la My Favorite Murder, a la Hotels. We are announcing the winners of our drawing at the end of this episode, finally. So stay tuned for that. And also, remember that anyone who emails a screenshot of their review to us or just lets us know somehow that they left that review, they'll get a bookmark as a thank you. Those are on their way to me as we speak, so they'll be on their way to you right after that. Finally, I had a revelation after we recorded our last episode. I was thinking about the boners that we talked about in Night of the Crabs. And remember how the author described Cliff Davenport's boner as a moist hardness or a hard moistness. What?
Me, I don't remember that actually, but
I don't remember that in particular either, but
we can go on.
Well, that was on my mind, I guess. And
moist
then,
hardness. Two words that should not be put together.
Exactly.
Moist. What else is also moist and hard?
Oh.
Like a tree in the forest when it's raining.
Okay.
But anatomically, I don't know. But we had a whole conversation about it, and then I realized Cliff Davenport is British, and so he probably has foreskin, and so that's probably where the moistness comes from, because that it's like a little hat that traps your. What?
I just spilled beer on my abs, so that's moist and hard.
What'd you say, Lindsay?
I said I just spilled beer on my abs.
Oh,
an example
so your abs are wet
of
and hard.
moist
Wow.
hardness.
Okay. In case our listeners were ever
be a
wondering,
great episode.
I can tell already.
Lindsay has abs.
I
Daniel,
do fucking have abs.
Daniel does not have abs.
Oh,
I don't know about
definitely
Amber.
do.
Every
So Lindsay is the one in this podcast with the abs, just to clarify.
I do. Not
I'll
to
tell you
brag.
what. No, you should brag. If you've earned abs, you get the right to brag about them.
Like, I totally get why there's so many like shirtless guys in bathrooms taking pictures of themselves, because it's
Wow.
a thing. I don't know, it's a thing.
You can always send us photos of your abs if you want.
Well, it's got to be like in the right light and
Okay.
angle, which is also why those guys in bathrooms like have to like fucking
They're
angle
holding
themselves in a
they're
fucking
holding the
weird
phone
way
up or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a MySpace angle for your abs.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of bodies, though, another thing that I was thinking about is, I feel pretty good about myself. And when I started reading these books and these like extended descriptions of the perfect woman's body, just like miles of breasts and then tiny, tiny waists and then these, big fleshy hips and long legs, and man, there's nothing that'll knock you down a notch or two than reading about pulp women.
It's the male gaze in
exactly.
this pulp.
Yeah.
I think movies are more, for me, I'm more of a visual person, obviously, because like I'm the one who always like casts the book.
Yeah, you do.
I think seeing just a whole world of skinny people with no, that's like more a thing for me personally. But I can totally see how this would raise female insecurities. So glad that we are doing this.
Tearing them down. We'll tear them down.
This is the 3rd episode of our 3-part recap of the book A Corpse for Christmas. Disclaimer, spoilers ahead.
Okay, so in my third, the first third, we have Al Wheeler. He gets called to a party because someone has discovered a dead body underneath the bed. We come to find out that it is the body of none other than Dean Carroll, the previous owner-operator, is it Dean Carroll and Associates? Whatever. Of this supposedly large PR firm in a place called Pine City, which is not in Southern California, but is, according to this book and this author. And we have followed Al Wheeler as he has tried to figure out who wanted to kill Dean and who actually did it.
So then in my third, there's a couple new dead bodies. As he's trying to figure out who done it, he comes to the rescue of Janice Iverson, who was Dean Carroll's former mistress. But he comes a little too late. He finds her strangled in the bed. At that apartment, he also finds Dean's former business associate, Mal Jorgens, who claims that he didn't kill Janice. He found her like that. But then when Al turns his head for a minute, Mal Jorgens jumps out the window and he dies. So we have two new dead people. At the sheriff's office, they find out that Dean Carroll used to be known as Joe Bartok. He had two business partners back then, Malcolm something and George Simpson, and they were in prison for a few years. Then they got out, and they said they went straight, but now there's murder left and right. The only surviving partner is Larry Wolf, aka George Simpson. Al Wheeler went to go talk to him about it and see if he can get any more info, and didn't really get anywhere, and that was the end of my third.
Also, I would like to point out that we find out in my third that the pickup line for our hero in the story is to tell women that he locks his wife in cellar. So I just wanted to, I forgot to put that in my little recap of the first third. So
yeah.
I just gotta put that out there.
There's a couple callbacks in my third, too.
Good.
There's one in particular that I think will be good. All right, so main characters. I have just this little character list just for funsies. So I know you just said this, but just to recap as we recap. The main character and protagonist is Al Wheeler, the detective. Dean Carroll is the dead guy who also is known as Joe Bartok. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the same person. Toni Carroll is Dean Carroll's wife, who is having an affair with Greg Talon, who was Dean's PR man for this PR firm. Yes?
Sharon Stone. Yeah, Sharon Stone is Dean's wife.
Good.
Yeah.
I've also cast Steve Carell as Dean Carroll, so.
Oh, I like it.
Okay.
In a serious role? Steve Carell?
Yeah,
Serious?
I made a whole family tree.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, perfect.
That I will send you to post with my show notes.
Excellent.
So that people can see the love relationships are in red and the money relationships are in green.
Wow.
So
Wow,
you'll
you
see.
did a whole phylogeny, jeez.
So what we know at this point of the story was that there was a Christmas party. Dean was found shot under the bed by Toni and Greg, who saw someone dressed as Santa Claus leave the guest room. Janice Iverson, who apparently is overweight, also asserted the existence of Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. Dean Carroll
asserted the existence of Santa Claus.
Yeah, this is important. Dean Carroll, dead guy, is hated by basically everyone, as we will see over the course of the next 2-3 chapters. Mm-hmm. Oh, Jerry Shaw. Who is he?
Jerry Shaw is the guy who worked under Dean. He was basically the second command in command. He was the senior associate at the PR firm. And he was the one who was telling Al Wheeler that Greg Talon, a.k.a. the man in the bunny suit with the pencil-thin mustache, likes to go to the gymnasium because he's a latent homosexual. Mm-hmm. That was Jerry Shaw.
Greg Talon is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh.
Wow, back again. Jennifer Pansy, nailed this.
I know. Jerry Shaw is Ryan Gosling.
Okay.
Chapter 8. Al Wheeler goes to Carol's house, where Greg Talon meets him at the door. Talon isn't happy to see him and says that he can't see Mrs. Carroll because she's busy. Wheeler's like, nice joke, and pushes his way inside, which seems highly illegal because, like, shouldn't he have a warrant or something?
Yeah.
To go inside. But I guess this is Pine City, so what can you do? Wheeler goes inside and sees that Mrs. Carroll is sitting with Jerry Shaw. When Shaw sees Wheeler, he goes to leave, but Wheeler insists that he stay in case he can help answer any questions. So Wheeler reminds Greg and Tony that Janice Iverson was the only person who also saw Santa Claus, and, therefore, the only potentially corroborating witness to their story that they saw the Santa Claus person at the party, at Iris Malone's party, right? As a reminder, Greg and Tony were saying that they saw someone in the Santa Claus outfit leaving the guest room before they entered and found Dean's body. Janice is the only other person to have seen Santa Claus at this party, and she saw this person in the kitchen.
When she got goosed.
Janice got goosed?
Yeah. She was the one who was all ho, 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 and then he goosed me.
Oh.
And then I couldn't figure out what the fuck goosed meant. So.
Okay. So after he reminds them, he proceeds to inform them that Janice was strangled to death the previous night. This is important because now there's no one left who saw anybody wearing a Santa suit at that party. Wheeler wants to know where Greg was last night when Janice was strangled. Greg hesitates, but Tony is like, look, everybody knows we're having an affair. He was here with me last night. It's not a thing. It's fine. He was here with me. But no one besides her can confirm this, leading Wheeler to point out that now they have no one to back their claim if there even was a Santa Claus. Also leads Wheeler
thickens.
I know. The plot is forever fucking thickening until it's not thickening anymore. So just stay with me if you can. Okay. It also leads Wheeler to hypothesize that they may have paid Janice to lie for them. To say that there was a Santa Claus. If she was getting nervous about lying to the police, they might have killed her.
Wow.
Seems pretty messy to me. Why would that seems very messy.
So they kill Tony's husband and then pay her to say it was Santa Claus and then kill her?
Yep, that is what Al Wheeler is suggesting.
You're off on something.
I completely agree.
Okay.
But it gets a little bit more intense. Okay.
You'd think that after 30 books, he'd have a little bit better insight into the reasons why people do certain things.
I know. Oh my god, I know. Okay. Wheeler relays Tony's basic motives, who is now quote-unquote hysterical, which is very much a gendered term, BTW. Her husband knew she had a lover. Dean went out of his way to ruin Talon's business as revenge. With Dean gone, Tony would inherit the money and most of his business, and then she could marry Greg Talon and live happily ever after with him. So this is Wheeler's current thesis.
Wait, so I have a question. So then why the fuck, if he and Tony are really porking, then why is Jerry Shaw like so convinced that this guy is a latent homosexual? Like, I don't understand why that's even relevant then if we're like establishing that they're having an affair.
Yeah. It's a good question. It's a great question. Let's get there.
Okay.
Before they can respond, Shaw jumps in and says a lot of people actually wanted Dean Carroll dead. Oh, hey, all these, 7,000 people wanted this guy dead. He suggests that maybe Janice told the person in the Santa suit that she had seen them, and then maybe Janice was blackmailing Santa. Quote, he wouldn't have any choice, alibi-wise, but to kill her then, would he? And they is the kind of pronoun a woman could easily use in a loose sense, syntax-wise, when she was suffering from tremendous emotional trauma, in fear of her life, and such, end quote. Jerry Shaw is basically saying that if Janice was blackmailing Santa, Santa would have no choice but to kill her. But then he says, so Janice, when she was on the phone with Wheeler, that she was like,
they're gonna get me,
yeah. But he says, he calls this syntax, and I think that this is more diction. And I'm not sure why
there is
a fucking distinction, and it's a shame that this writer doesn't know that. I'm not sure why the pronoun they is easier for a woman to use than a man, given that Jerry Shaw himself is a man and just used the fucking word.
Right.
But whatever.
Okay.
After this hypothesis about Janice blackmailing Santa, Wheeler responds that the only person who could be in the position to blackmail Janice is Mal Jorgens, who is now also dead. Mm-hmm. Remember, Janice was calling basically anybody with a phone number, including Jorgens.
Right. On the night that she died, she just called all her friends.
Just fucking hitting random fucking numbers, just calling everybody saying she's in danger. He found her body and, thinking no one would believe that he didn't kill her, killed himself. That's Jorgens. So Jorgens killed himself because obviously he would be pinned with her murder. Right. Shaw still remains skeptical that this means Jorgen didn't kill both Janice and Dean. I mean, it does seem like it doesn't mean that he didn't, right? No. But Wheeler basically says that a double murderer wouldn't commit suicide, and Shaw has no alternative theory.
Why wouldn't a double murderer commit suicide? Why?
Don't question the master.
Okay.
The master.
I'm so sorry.
There was a part that I didn't read in my third because I was like, this is so stupid. Where they were back at the sheriff's office and Sheriff Lavers was like, well, I think it's Mal Jorgens. And Al Wheeler goes, yeah, but did the bullet in Dean's head match the gun that he was holding to me? And the answer was no. And then the sheriff said, well, yeah, but he could have had a second gun. And Al Wheeler just like laughed that off and was like, that's the most absurd argument I've ever heard.
This is America. When, everybody has 3 guns.
He absolutely could have had a second gun.
Well, and then we're also forgetting, so again, in my third, Wheeler finds out from Lewis, the flaming homosexual at the costume shop, that...
Who is, by the way, Dwayne The Rock
Johnson.
Linzi. Amazing.
Oh, God. He finds out from him, remember, that Iris Malone also rented a Santa costume on top of the pirate costume that she got. And then also the charities that rented the costumes, like Larry Wolf is the one that set that up. So I don't know why he's somehow forgot. Like, so if Santa's the one that killed Dean, why are you not following the Santa lead more?
We do go back to
Santa.
Lewis in a minute, so we'll see. Okay. At this point, Wheeler announces to Tony, Jerry Shaw, and Greg Talon that Dean was an ex-convict who served in San Quentin for 3 years before landing in Pine City. He pointed out that Dean had criminal partnerships with both Mal Jorgens and Larry Wolf, who was played by Idris Elba. So Talon...
Clearly.
Okay.
So Talon is like, okay, we want our lawyer by, and Wheeler goes to leave, and Shaw follows him to the door. Shaw says, I wouldn't know about Tony. Who does know about women? But I could never believe that Greg Talon is capable of murder.
Because he's gay. He can't kill anybody.
It's just not in his blood.
It's not. Okay.
Wheeler reminds Shaw that he's previously said that Talon is scared of women, that Tony Carroll is basically a woman. Wheeler says...
Basically.
Wheeler says, quote, frankly, analysis-wise, you've so far batted 0, Shaw, end quote. This reflects 2 things. He doesn't particularly like or believe Shaw, and the author's favorite word tick is to unnecessarily add the suffix wise to random words.
Yeah. His word tick.
It's ridiculous. I actually make it a point to like include the quote every single fucking time. We find out some new information. Wolf's account, which Dean Carroll stole from Jorgens, was worth $20,000 a year. Jorgens has lost money and been double-crossed by Carroll. Wheeler asks, tell me, confidentially wise. Just
Are you serious?
Confidentially wise? Okay, got
Confidentially wise. Just what plans exactly does the widow lady have for the future of the business?
Wise.
Wise. Shaw responds that right now he's getting a generous amount for keeping the business running. Then, in about 6 months, it'll be renamed Greg Talon and Associates.
Oh, wow.
He says, it doesn't sing to me, image-wise.
Okay.
But then maybe I'm biased. So Wheeler goes back to the office. Lavers calls him into... Okay, so Wheeler goes back to the police station, rather. Lavers calls him into the office. We're reminded that Wheeler had instructed Sergeant Polnick to go to Jorgen's office.
Polnick.
Who is Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
Jonah Hill.
There we find a Santa Claus costume and what has been tested and proven to be the gun that murdered Dean Carroll.
Oh.
Yep, at Jorgen's office. So Lavers is like totally smug, and Wheeler is basically pissed because he's dumb. He grabs the costume and demands 24 hours to prove that someone else, anybody else, is the murderer besides Jorgen. Chapter 9. So Wheeler had taken the Santa suit from Lavers' office and brought it to Lewis, played by The Rock. The gay caricature from Daniel's third of the book. Wheeler is completely offended by the strength of Lewis's cologne. This is like a page or two of material.
Oh
Yeah, that's a thing.
He wonders about what would happen if a gay man had allergies. Quote, was he automatically doomed to a heterosexual world or what?
Oh my god.
End quote.
Yep.
What the hell?
Okay.
Honestly, I feel like more insecure straight men wear cologne than gay men. I don't know.
I don't wear cologne.
Was a gay man thing.
Yeah.
What?
No.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I feel like.
Okay.
Well, okay.
I only wear like perfume that smells like vaginas.
Eau de vagina to ward away the gay men. Yes.
To ward away, these gay men that tackle me in the street. Anyway, Lewis is doing his job. He confirms that the Santa suit is the one rented by Iris Malone the night of the party. Wheeler asks if the costumes come in various sizes, to which Al responds, oh, brother. Okay, quote, just small, medium, and large. For boys, as well as men, you know. We have to accommodate the boys in the school plays, after all. End quote. So Wheeler describes Lewis's excitement about this idea like someone else talking about burlesque.
No.
Again, I really think that this is like not a very good.
So not only is he like a flaming homosexual, but he's also like molesting.
A pedophile.
Got
He's
it.
also Roy Moore. Okay, the gay version of Roy Moore.
Roy Moore.
Wheeler asked about the size of that particular costume, and Lewis responded immediately that it was a medium. He knows this because he's gasping along the way as he says this, but he had to measure Iris Malone's fucking chest, and he's like freaking out. He's shuddering in revulsion.
Oh my god.
I don't hate boobies. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't hate boobies.
Thank you.
Also, if that's your job to measure people, like, 'cause you're
you need to
fucking...
find a new career.
I mean, what's wrong with boobs? Wheeler asks if a 6-foot tall man weighing 180 pounds could fit into it. Lewis is like, no, that's ridiculous. but offers Wheeler the chance to see for himself. He says, why don't you try on the costume? So Wheeler struggles to put on the costume and then gives up, making it clear that if someone was wearing that particular Santa suit, it was probably a woman.
Huh.
Or a tiny man. Lewis then outs himself as a murderino.
As a murderino?
As a what?
A murderino. He fucking loves true crime. And begs for all the kinds of details that the newspaper can't print because the kids might see. To which Wheeler responds with a completely gratuitous non sequitur. Quote, okay, fucking listen.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So Lewis is like, oh, tell me about the details, like any normal person would ask.
Yeah.
And then Wheeler responds, this is his response. If I ever found any fairies at the bottom of my garden like you, Lou, I'd spray them with an insecticide.
What the?
Oh my god. Al Wheeler is a fucking asshole. Jesus.
So we learned that we hate this protagonist.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, who doesn't like true crime?
But Al is like sick of people asking him for details.
The book has every opportunity that the book has to disparage gay men in whatever way, it's gonna do it. It's just like gonna happen.
Dang.
Yeah. Wheeler leaves and heads to Iris Malone's house, who is, P.S., the host of the party that, Dean Carroll was killed at. He rings the doorbell, she answers, and is completely annoyed to see him. She's like, don't you have anything better to do? So then Wheeler compares himself to a plumber. If I was the plumber come to fix the drains, you'd give me a bright, welcoming smile, right? So how about doing the same for a lieutenant come to reconstruct the crime? She's like, oh, okay.
He's so good with these lines.
Yeah.
He's not.
My wife's in the cellar. She doesn't talk to me anymore.
Yeah. I gotta, honestly, like, Cliff Davenport and Buzz Cardigan were both better at these, like, one-liners.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd date one of them over this guy any day.
Well, I don't know.
Preferably Cliff. I don't know. I kind of like Cliff.
And his moist hardness.
Now that I know why.
Among the three, I would, if I had to choose, I would definitely pick Cliff. But yeah. Okay, all right. But I don't want to. All right.
You don't have to.
He's like, I'm coming to reconstruct the crime. She's like, oh, okay. Because you can really reconnect the dots without the other 8 people in the house milling about. # sarcasm. She didn't really say that. But...
Right. No, I gathered as much.
She's completely dismissive and is like, I need to begin drinking immediately. What? She offers him a drink and he responds, well, if you think you need one, I guess I do.
Okay.
I had to check that twice, but yes, he's saying he needs a drink if she's going to drink while explaining the serious importance of his job and scene reconstruction.
Got it.
So yeah, he just a couple pages ago, he was completely disgusted and dismissive of Lou, but now completely run over by this lady, and it's like just completely personality 180. I thought that was weird. Mm-hmm. He tries to tell the variation of the, well, Virginia, there really is a Santa Claus line, mm-hmm. which she interrupts twice, but he like continues to tell this line. And he finally finishes anticlimactically, there isn't a Santa Claus. Bum, bum, bum. Uh-oh. And she's like, what the fuck?
He said, I'm sorry, Virginia. There isn't a Santa Claus.
Yeah, this comes back. That he fucking loves that joke. So, Wheeler explains that the suit is too small for any man because she rented it and it was specifically fitted to her size. So remember, yeah, Lewis was grossed out because he had to measure her chest size. Mm-hmm. Since she was in the pirate costume, he's now thinking there never was Santa Claus. All right, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation. This is not necessarily what happened, but this is what he's saying to her at this point in time.
Okay.
It's 8:30 p.m. the night of this party. There are a dozen people in the house plus Iris. Larry Wolf suggests they play a game, Murder in the Dark, wherein everyone pulls a card out of a hat. One card says murderer and the other says detective. The murderer kills people by tapping them on the shoulder, and the detective then has to ask everyone questions about what happened, piecing together who did what, when, where. That's it.
Okay.
When and where. About 45 minutes into the game, around 9:15 p.m., if it started around 8:30, Dean Carroll wanders into the guest bedroom and is shot. Around 9:30, Greg Talon and Mrs. Carroll go into the room, claiming they saw Santa Claus go out of the room, and they discover the body under the bed around 9:45. Now he's talking Iris through the situation. Where did this guy come from if all 13 people are accounted for? Where did the Santa suit come from if this wasn't the suit? Then he says that this Santa, quote, sat around for 30 minutes to keep the corpse company before he heard Talon and Mrs. Carroll outside. Iris chimes in and is like, this makes no fucking sense. So you're telling me all these people lied, that there's some kind of fucking conspiracy? And Wheeler's basically like, yes, let me tell you. Wheeler recaps how Shaw had stopped him and told him that Mal Jorgens had a motive to kill Dean Carroll and that Janice Iverson had an affair with Dean a while back. But Jorgens couldn't have been the Santa Claus because he would have been seen by one of the people. I mean, there were 13 people at this party. All right, so let's get there. All right, Wheeler then recaps this for us. There are 5 people that we know of that would benefit from Dean's death and have means and motive. Alone, they couldn't have done it, but it was possible if they did it together. These 5 people are, number 1, Iris, who organized the party. Number 2, Larry Wolf, who came up with the murder game. Number 3, Tony Carroll. Number 4, Greg Talon. And number 5, Janice Iverson. Okay, wait, what did I say? I said, okay, so number 6, this conspiracy is all kinds of fucked, and I can see why Lavers is skeptical of Wheeler's detective work.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's look at this scenario closely. Number 1, why or how does Iris benefit from the murder? Do we know?
Well, it's just a revenge thing at that point because Dean Carroll told everybody in town not to hire her as a copywriter.
Oh!
She doesn't necessarily benefit.
Okay.
She just, like, gets it out of her system.
It's like revenge.
So during that whole spiel where Larry Wolf, Iris Malone, and Wheeler are all sitting in Iris's house, and Larry is telling Wheeler, like, all the reasons why people would want Dean dead. He tells Wheeler that Iris was sleeping with Dean, and Dean was the one that made it so that she could have that copywriting job, even though her copy was trash. And then after a while, I guess, I don't know, Dean decided that he wasn't going to support her anymore, and so they stopped. Yeah. Like, nobody's going to publish her copy. But she doesn't need to do the copy anyway because she comes from money. Like, the only reason that she's doing it is because, according to Larry Wolf, so that she has something to do.
It's not about money, though. It's about her ego. I still think she might be, but anyway.
Number 2, it was Wolf's account that Carol stole from Jorgens, not the other way around, because at this point, Wolf has no known motive to kill Dean. Okay. Is this right? Is this correct?
Other than... Well, what about the blackmail? So the reason that Dean was able to poach him...
This is an issue.
So
okay, I gotta listen.
Okay. Dean was blackmailing Wolf, and that's why Wolf left Jorgens' PR firm. That's how Dean poached Wolf from Jorgens.
This is actually really good for everyone, not just the audience, but also me, because I obviously didn't remember any of these fucking things. I'm like, this is fucking crazy. Like, okay. Number 3, Toni Carroll. So that makes sense, okay, because she's the wife and she would benefit. 4, Greg Talon. That would make sense because he would get the business. 5, Janice Iverson had an affair with Carol, which apparently he broke off because she was overweight for him. And Mal Jorgens. But if there is really a conspiracy, wouldn't he have been a part of it? Wouldn't it make sense if he was a part of it? But he didn't include Mal Jorgens in the original list of 5. That was just my side note. So Iris is looking at him with, like, the googly scrapbook eyes. And is like, you are fucking crazy.
The googly scrapbook eyes.
Wheeler ends the chapter saying, so Wheeler's like, you're fucking crazy. Wheeler ends the chapter saying, quote, just remember one thing, Iris. From here on out, you've got no place to go. Except my apartment tonight.
What?
What the fuck? Oh my god.
This is Pine City.
Okay.
Pine City. Seriously, like, this whole interaction, he was just like, and then I'm gonna ask her out.
Yeah, this is crazy. Al Wheeler has set himself up as bait in his apartment. He's really nervous and thinking about how dumb this idea is. And that's not, he's like, this is a bad idea. A little after 8 p.m., someone buzzes at his door. He opens the door 2 inches and with his gun ready to blast anything that looked remotely like Santa Claus.
Okay. Shoot first, ask questions later, all right?
Who do we think is at the door?
Who do you think's at the door?
Well, the simplest explanation, or the simplest answer would be that it's Iris, because
he invited her.
You just asked her to come.
Occam's razor. So in walks Iris Malone.
Nice job, Daniel.
This description is worth the time. Quote, she stood waiting for me, her black evening purse held tight in one hand, looking magnificent. The full-length evening gown was a simple black crepe sheath with a wide scooped-out neckline, frothed with black lace that left most of her shoulders bare and revealed a good 3 inches of tight cleavage between the swelling mounds of her full breasts. It looked like it needed just one deep breath and she would be walking around naked to the waist.
Oh my god. So two women in his apartment. The first one, he's like, all I have to do is pull this string and she's naked. Here's the second one. He's like, all I have to do is breathe on her and she's naked.
Breathe on her. Wait, first of all, I have a question. Why the fuck is she showing up in a fucking evening gown to his apartment?
I have a lot of questions about this whole fucking situation. You have no idea how confused I was. Like,
wow.
I remain confused. Okay. Yeah, okay. But along what Amber said, I think Carter Brown really likes easy to remove clothing on women.
Yeah. That's a thing.
Notably, this is unlike Guy Smith, who in Night of the Crabs had women getting in and out of jeans, which is a thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated that, because I was like, yeah, sometimes it's awkward to get naked. But
that's the only reason I remember that is because you made that comment.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, jeans.
But Carter Brown's just like, zip.
I want a fucking drawstring.
Yeah.
Just pull this string and she's naked.
So Iris Malone sits on the couch and is like, oh, I'm super stressed and I need a drink. At this point, in my notes, it's not clear why she's there.
Yeah. Since
the invitation at the end of the last chapter seemed a complete non sequitur, or why she's stressed. Yeah. Like, why is she stressed? Why is she there? Why anything? So Wheeler goes to the kitchen and makes her a drink. When he comes back, she finally reveals to the reader why she's there. She's like, if I fess up to everything, would I get some kind of benefit? What? And Wheeler is like, yeah, sure. Probably like less time than the other conspirators. So Iris is like, yeah, it was Larry Wolf. Apparently, he had agreed to do the actual killing if everybody else participated.
Whoa.
Oh, so it was everybody then.
Well, all right. So now I'm going to go into her story. About 5 minutes into the game, so like 9:20ish, she had told Dean that Larry needed to speak with him in the guest room. He, quote, rolled the body under the bed and then left the room carrying on and playing the game with the other guests. Then Wheeler flat out asks, what's Wolf's motive? Which is funny since earlier in that day, at her fucking place, he was explaining to her how he was convinced that Wolf was in on it.
Yeah, and he already talked to Wolf. He knows the motive.
Well, I don't know. He's asking her.
Okay.
Apparently, Dean Carroll had blackmailed Wolf into transferring his account. So this apparently is not new information, but seemed fucking new to me and him at the time. So Wolf, the guy who was like, hey, let's play a game of murder.
Yeah.
Did have a motive, means, and opportunity to kill Carol after all. Now, I have a couple side notes. Number one, why couldn't she have just said this earlier at her place? Like without
putting on without putting on the evening gown and bringing her like fancy clutch with her.
Yeah. Number two, I'm still really confused about the blood spatter. And also, I'm assuming that there's some kind of silencer used. Because if this guy was fucking shot to death in the middle of this party with 13 people, there would have to be some kind of silencer, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, there was?
Yeah, when Al was first back at the sheriff's office in my third, they were talking about, anybody can have a Santa suit, but a silencer is a whole other deal. So it had to be somebody with, some access to weaponry.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense then. My third note. Dear listeners, this is a holiday suggestion from 33% Pulp. Don't play murder games with people who actually want to murder you. It's not a good idea. If someone who actually wants to murder you is like, hey, let's play this game called Murder, like, don't do it.
Hightail it out of that party as fast as you can.
Yeah, so this is Iris telling him it was Larry Wolf, right? And she's telling all the details, whatever else. And then Wheeler's like, okay, so I've got only one question. Who's standing in the front hall?
What?
At this moment, Iris flings her drink in his face, and someone comes and tackles Wheeler, who I guess was standing, because he drops his gun, which, remember, he was holding at the door. Yeah, this is the second time he's lost his gun.
Wheeler.
And recovers to see Jerry Shaw standing next to Iris, pointing his own gun at him. Wow. So when he had gone to make drinks, she had gone and opened the door for Jerry Shaw. And he had come back, and she was sitting back on the couch.
Yeah.
So Jerry Shaw says this: I have news for you, Lieutenant. Never underestimate the powers of a woman. He said it like that, too. He said it exactly like that.
Never underestimate.
Yeah, almost like Forrest
The
Gump.
powers of a woman wise.
Wheeler responds, I figured you were about to say, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
Shut up. He said it again.
Because he can't stop it with that joke. he just can't. He just loves it.
He loves it.
Shaw reveals that there was a Santa Claus, but one that had been in the room before the party even started, which, okay, that sort of makes sense. Okay. So Wheeler is like, yeah, I knew that the whole time. The only way the Santa could be there is if Iris let him in before the party started. Which makes, I guess, sense, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Shaw responds, quote, you're giving me an inferiority complex, ego-wise, about the whole thing. End quote.
Ego-wise.
As if feeling
As opposed
inferior.
to what? Like,
He doesn't usually implicate one's ego, right? So Wheeler tells Shaw that he was always overeager to give information and that he seemed to have tons of information on Janice Iverson. This raised his suspicions from the beginning, but he still didn't know exactly why Shaw wanted Dean Carroll dead. So Shaw responds, quote, you've never worked for a man like Dean Carroll. Bastard-wise.
what is this happening? What? As
Bastard-wise?
Bastard-wise. Okay. All right.
He was as big as they come, if not bigger. End quote. Then he reveals the affair Janice Iverson was having with Dean Carroll, which had ended before Dean married Tony, and that despite having ended the affair and being married to someone else, Dean was still sending Janice monthly checks, which I would appreciate personally. So to dig up some dirt on Carroll, this is Shaw. Shaw began cozying up with Janice, who is Callista Flockhart, and quote,
I love what you've done there.
And,
Bravo.
quote, one night when she was overcome with liquor and, he grimaced, sex, she told me about Dean's past exploits as a con man, end quote. So Shaw's wheels start turning and thinking about Tony and Greg's affair, sees that they would also benefit from Dean being dead. So Shaw plans this whole thing out, including Janice's phone calls. Apparently he had gone to her apartment and forces her to call everyone with a gun, quote, pushed into her overweight bust.
Whoa.
Yep. Okay, quote, pushed into her overweight bust, exclamation point. If you must be accurate, fact-wise, Lieutenant. Oh, this is me, I think, editorializing. The depth of character, Lewis and Janice, is pretty shallow here, and the continuity leaves much to be desired. The twists and turns are interesting, but there's very little at stake because we don't give a shit about Dean and have no fucking idea who any of these people fucking are.
Good point.
At some point in my copy, they refer to Mrs. Carroll as Mrs. Talon, which really problematizes things.
Oh, wow. So when I was like, oh, do these people have multiple names? Or, like, it could have been. I could have been reading, like, the wrong name.
I mean, in my experience, yeah, Tony Carroll was called Mrs. Talon. So it's very possible that, like, you were confused for good reason.
But isn't that supposed to be like because they're having the affair or something? Like, so
it could have been like a side jokey thing, like Mrs. Talon or whatever.
Talon.
But like
Right.
me only having read a third of the book was like super confused about who Mrs. Talon was.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, we talked when we started this book, or before the episode before we started this book, about how the back cover had that like leap year is 13 weeks long edit on it. Like, if this guy's pumping out books every fortnight, I don't care how good of an editor you are, you're not going to catch everything. Like, you're not going to catch everything. You need more than 2 weeks to get all these goddamn characters' names right.
In my opinion, it would have worked better if we had known more about these people prior to the case, and I think it would have been possible to have both depth of character and Al Wheeler as the central protagonist. So, for example, look at like Sherlock Holmes, look at Miss Marple, who I love. Like, you've got character and detective works. Yeah. Back to the story.
Story-wise,
we're here. So Wheeler turns to Iris and is like, I'm not buying it. Why are you even here? He calls her a beard and then explains what that means to her. Giving the example of a married guy meeting up with his mistress but bringing along a single male friend, because to an outsider they would look like a threesome with the married guy being the odd one out. So he calls her Shaw's beard. So this is gonna break your mind. Yeah, she's Shaw's beard. All right, so listen.
Iris is Shaw's beard.
Yep, okay.
Wait, but Shaw's not... Okay. I'm so confused. Okay, go ahead.
Dude.
Sorry.
This is where I've been living for the past couple weeks. Okay, so... Like, I had to send you all those text messages.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
What the fuck? Yeah, because this is what really happened, okay? So, this is the truth. So, all of the other 2-3 things that I've said before, ignore.
Okay.
Right, so this is what actually happened.
Dismissed. No problem.
Just cut all of that and just leave this.
From the record,
and it would be,
please.
like... better for the listeners. Greg and Tony's relationship, along with Jerry and Iris's, was all part of the plan. Tony and Jerry were always going to take over Dean's business together, but they needed to implicate more people to muddy the trajectory of their motives. In other words, Greg and Iris were completely extra, and their relationships were just fronts for Tony and Jerry's relationship.
What?
Wait, so then why the fuck why is Iris showing up at Wheeler's apartment?
She thinks she's with Jerry.
Oh,
and so she wants to pin it on Larry.
Oh my god. Jerry and Larry. Okay.
Jerry.
Okay.
Wait, and so then she's also hearing Shaw tell Wheeler this then. Or is Wheeler the one saying this?
Yeah, no, she's sitting there and is like,
Wow.
I actually don't know why I'm here either. What the fuck? Like, who are you?
Okay.
Jerry says, quote, and this is something you always want to hear, "You are always expendable, Iris baby. But I figured on easing you out gently."
Oh.
P.S. When I first said easing you out, I accidentally typed a T where the S should be, and it was completely wrong.
Gently, though. Gently.
Gently.
Oh my
And it wouldn't matter too much how mad you got when you found out I was going to marry Tony. You'd have to admit your own involvement, murder-wise, if you went to the police. So I figured about the worst you could do is not send us a wedding gift, end quote. So now that the plans are, like, gone to shit, Jerry decides that he's going to have to shoot both Iris and Elle because that's the Pine City way.
The Pine City way.
So now there's more dialogue about how Jerry's going to cover up the double homicide. Cool. Jerry finishes relaying his plan, and Wheeler's like, "Too bad Polnick is right outside." And basically, after a few lines of confusion and tension, the buzzer actually fucking buzzes.
Oh.
Shaw's like, "Oh my fucking god." And Wheeler takes his time to punch him a bunch. And Iris is huddled up on the couch crying because she's just been doubly used. So Wheeler takes control of the situation. The police come over and take over. Iris is very willing to say everything that happened down at the station, which I'm glad we didn't see because we probably wouldn't understand it, even after listening to almost 3 hours of us summarizing this book.
Right.
Lavers, who's there at Wheeler's apartment, insults him and is like, "Oh, I'm surprised there's no bodies this time," because apparently, like, whenever Wheeler closes a case, there's usually, like, a dead body.
Okay.
So everybody leaves Wheeler's apartment. Wheeler goes to his bedroom and reveals a woman inside.
Oh, who?
For goodness sake. It's fucking Margaret Harding.
Back?
Why is she fucking there?
She's been caged in there.
She can't come to find out he doesn't actually have a cellar, but he does have a lock on his bedroom door.
He does have a lock that is, you lock it from the outside, and it's real handy. And she immediately complains about this. Turns out she's the one who rang the buzzer, not Polnick.
Oh.
He said Polnick is right outside, but he was just bluffing. Really, it was this mystery woman that just happened to show up, thank God.
And this mystery woman is or is not Maggie Harding.
Well, because you don't know. I mean, there's
okay.
pages of you not knowing who this woman is. Now, in my notes, I have, anybody want to guess who this lady is?
All right.
Fucking Margaret.
No,
Maggie.
it's
Okay,
not.
okay, you
It's
both said
Annabelle.
this. Okay,
it's
fine.
Annabelle. Oh, it is?
This lady is Maggie.
Wait, who the fuck is Annabelle?
Annabelle's the other sexy secretary at the
Oh,
sheriff's
that's
office.
right. That's right.
Who has the drawstring? Oh, no, I actually know. I don't know why I asked that. This lady is Maggie.
What?
Come to apologize for how she treated him the other night when he misread the situation and stripped her by pulling on her dress's drawstring.
She's apologizing.
She's apologizing for being assaulted. That's great.
Yeah, that's what's happening. She's like, I'm sorry I was so rude to you, but hey, I got my dress fixed. She says, quote, now it won't come apart with the sharp tug the way it used to, ! Miserable, Wheeler is like, it won't? And she's like, no, all it needs is a gentle pull, like this.
Oh my god.
Oh, for
quote,
sake.
One moment she was standing there real elegantly dressed, and the next moment she was standing there looking even more elegantly undressed for an intimate evening at my place. Oh. She's wearing some cute underwear, and she's got nice legs, which I remember was like 2 paragraphs, but I didn't actually write it down. Wheeler comments that she's really prepared herself, and she's like, yeah, buddy, now put those drinks down.
What?
The end.
What?
Why does it end this way?
I hate it.
Ending-wise,
it was not
Ending-wise?
It's not.
You guys, why on earth would Maggie go back to his place?
After
that
he fucking just
sense.
Started undressing her without her even...
And then she had to run out of his apartment basically unclothed. He didn't even give her his coat. That's such bullshit.
Right.
I gotta be honest with everybody. I was so confused throughout this entire...
I get it. I mean, especially having read that third, where it was like, it could be this. Oh, what if it was this? Nope, psych. It was like 2 relationships were just like faux relationships to cover up the real relationship, and it was actually this.
Yeah.
I feel like if he maybe like wrote all of those like possibilities and then didn't
just
want to throw
one.
away the writing that he did, and so he just incorporated it into the actual story.
Yep.
Oh my god, good call. Oh my god, that's
right.
Probably
because he's just got all this material, so he's got to make pages, right? So there it is.
That was real rough. And I gotta say that on Goodreads, like this got, one of the reviews on Goodreads was like, this was like a subpar entry from the, like one of the masters of Pulp Fiction.
Interesting.
I do think that maybe people more familiar with Carter Brown's work would also like agree that this is not his best work.
So we're not going to poop on Carter Brown.
We're just going to shit all over this particular book. Yeah, like this was not good. Like,
yeah, it doesn't feel good.
I'm not ready to write off Carter Brown. But I do think this was horrible. Mm-hmm. What did we like, not like, etc.? I didn't like the lack of continuity with names. Yeah. Like suddenly Mrs. Carroll was Mrs. Talon, or Jerry was also Shaw, and then also Dean Carroll had 2 names. Yeah. There's a degree to which I think that that's interesting and useful in terms of like a narrative device, you know, this kind of thing. But I feel like this particular book passed the threshold into like being unnecessarily complex.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I didn't like how our main character really just, I don't know. Again, we didn't get any description of him. This is his 30th book. Maybe earlier on he was more charming or something, but he's gross, and he just like sexually harasses women.
And then they come back to him for seconds
and apologize
what the fuck?
For how rude they were,
for not accepting his sexual harassment. Don't like that. Not particularly fond of that.
If I had to say something that I liked,
long pause.
Wow, that pause.
I think that there's probably like groundwork there that like this could have been good.
Yeah, a costume party around Christmas and a murder.
Yeah,
and it could have been good.
I think it could have been. I think that there's a lot of potential here, and I just think the execution wasn't so great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think maybe another 2 weeks would have been really useful for this guy.
Right.
I agree.
I mean, I did like the end of my third where Wolf is kind of like giving Wheeler the rundown on everybody that was at the party who would want Dean dead. Like, I did like that. That was interesting because like right at the end of it is like he has like his mic drop moment, which was like I was like, oh shit.
I had a hard time with this book, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
but next time, hey, we're going to start a new book.
Yeah.
And it will be called The Pleasure Tube, which is going to be great. So our next week, Amber will be recapping the first third of Robert Anopa's The Pleasure Tube.
Not even just Pleasure Tube, but the
Pleasure Tube. The one and only. It takes place in space, and I started it last night, and it's unlike anything that we've read so far. So you are in for a treat.
Does it mean that that's like really good?
Well, we'll
it's just unlike. It is not like any of the other.
It is unique.
I think that Night of the Crabs is my favorite.
Yeah, that's my favorite so far too.
Still
yeah,
my favorite.
Yeah.
I would rank them Night of the Crabs, Man from Pansy, and then this book.
I agree. Actually, I agree. I did not like Man from Pansy, but it's better than
You found a new low.
Yeah, exactly. But the pleasure,
sad story.
And I was getting a little tired of like the hero storyline and the damsel in distress sort of thing, or just these like buxom ladies that I don't know. See, that was a little repetitive, but I think maybe the Pleasure Tube is going to be a little different. We'll see.
Oh.
One of the issues that I had with this particular book is that there were so many characters that were so one-dimensional.
Yes, yeah.
At least in the other two books, I thought Man from Pansy had a ton of characters that might not have been completely necessary, but I do think that they had like a couple different aspects of the personality. Like, they were like I don't know, even if they were gay, they were a drag queen that did this thing that did this other thing. And with Night of the Crabs, I mean, we had a much smaller cast, and so it was so much easier to like follow the story. Whereas this one, it was like, and that's the gay guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is this even here?
Yeah. Well, anyway, so as promised, we're going to announce the winners of our drawing. Drum roll, please. Stop the drum roll. Stop the drum roll.
Abort! Abort!
We're like making noises.
Our books are going to MCSBST, another very clever username. Mixtab Street.
We're sorry about that.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to insult you. McStab Street, get in touch with us. We are sending you a copy of Man from Pansy. And then second winner is Miss Crabapple.
Crabapple.
You're right. Crabapple from The Simpsons. Miss Crabapple, who left a nice review on Stitcher. Thank you both. We will, if you hear that and then you get in touch with us, then we will figure out how to get you a book. Maybe it'll even arrive before the holidays. Yeah.
And also, Stitcher is a place where one can leave reviews. We've got a couple reviews there, obviously one by Miss Crabapple.
And then so that's just those are two examples, Stitcher and iTunes, of places where you could leave a review, and then you'll get a bookmark. You just have to let us know that you left a review. We'll send you that bookmark.
If you want to keep up with the show, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you subscribe to podcasts now. We just give you two options, whether that's iTunes or somewhere else, or like Stitcher. And if you'd like to reach us via social media, our Twitter handle is at 33_pulp. On Instagram, we're at 33pulp. And our website is 33pulp.com. And you can email us at weare3@33pulp.com.
So this is Lindsay signing off for Daniel and Amber. We're 33% pulp, and you're 100% wonderful listeners, podcast-wise. Bye.
Bye.